collective action to guarantee that cohesion, both at the government level, at the civil society level, at the community level, at the private level, private sector level, to ensure that we, defeat the monster of gender-based violence in our society. I want to believe that the teaming participants and the very seasoned speakers at this webinar will do justice, to the time and, of course, the entire advocacies thus far for the 2023 to a 16-day of activism. On this note, I want to, on behalf of the board, management, and staff of Aygf, welcome everyone to this webinar, and that we are able to get all the necessary understandings, education, enlightenment, awareness on the risk, dangers, and of course, the opportunities around gender-based violence and related advocacies. I want to thank our speakers for making our time, to prepare and indeed engage on these topics. And hopefully that we'll be able to work together going forward on several, considerations and opportunities. Thank you so much for the staff who have been able to package and put this together. I want to believe this is the beginning of the conversation. After the webinar, there will be a lot of introspection or retrospection, and then we'll be able to think of the way forward, collectively for a much bigger impact on the thematic focus. Thank you so much. Wish us the very best in the conversation.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for taking our time to join us and to address us here. So moving forward, let us look at what 16 Days of Activism is all about. It's a global campaign to challenge violence against women and girls. That is basically what this campaign is about. The campaign was started by activists at the inauguration of the Women's Global Leadership Institute in 1991. And ever since this campaign was started, it has been carried on from the 25th of November every year to the 10th of December. These are significant dates in the sense that 25th November is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls. And this marks the beginning of the 16 Days of Activism. While 10th of December, which is the last day, is the International Human Rights Day. Now, this makes it very significant in the sense that even though we're talking about violence against women and girls, we know that it's also a human rights issue. Where you have violence against women, we know that you are trampling on their fundamental human rights. And with these 16 days of activism, we bring to mind the fact that more action is needed to ensure that women in all their diversity live free of violence and coercion. It might interest us to know that 1 in every 3 women worldwide have experienced gender-based violence. That is a huge number if you check the absolute number. And too often, people respond to violence by blaming or shaming the victim. This is not supposed to be. But then, this is the world where we find ourselves. We believe that with these 16 days of activism, more light will be shed on this issue of violence against women and girls. And then this will help us to put an end to it as we proceed. So, in line with this and in the light of this, we'll be inviting our first speaker who will be speaking to us today. She is Ashifa Agede. Pardon me, Ma, if I did injustice to your name. Ashifa is an international development professional with more than 8 years of experience managing projects. Currently, she's serving as a program coordinator at CHESIS, that is Center for Health System Support, which is a non-profit organization on a mission to empower young minds and strengthen the health system. Ashifa's passion for the well-being of women and youth has taken her to the forefront of regional youth advocacies, tackling issues like ending FGM, that is female genital mutilation, in Africa. What keeps Ashifa going, you want to know? Her big dream is a Nigeria where girls and women can thrive without the shadow of sexual and gender-based violence. How does she make this happen? She does this through providing information, support, and advocacy that empower women and girls to make informed decisions and take actions that shield them from abuse. Ashifa holds a BA Ed in English and a master's in international relations and strategic studies from Benue State University, Makurdi. Beyond the professional life, Ashifa finds joy in gardening, reading, and spending quality time with her child. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Ashifa Agede, our first speaker, who will be giving us a talk on the effects of sexual and gender-based violence on women and girls. Welcome, Ms. Ashifa.
All right. Thank you, Rosemary. I hope that you're having a good day. Thank you for having me join this conversation. I hear people say that everything, women, girls, GBV, like, is it not enough? I'm like, we can never have enough of these conversations until women and girls feel safe in their communities, in their schools, in their workplace, and everywhere they find themselves. So thank you very much for making me part of this timely conversation. And I really appreciate the management of the Africa Youth Growth Foundation for thank you for the work that you're doing and for extending this invitation to me as well. So I have 20 minutes. I'll just run through a few things. Sexual and gender-based violence is something that most of us are aware of. Rosemary also gave us a background into why we are having this conversation at this time. And I'm glad that you also did some of my work by talking about the prevalence, rates across the globe. Basically, like we know, sexual and gender-based violence is violence that is targeted at a person based on or directed at a person based on or because of their gender or because of some peculiar vulnerabilities that exist around them. And then it usually affects, some persons from some genders much more or more disproportionately than others. Like some people are more at risk than others. So in the course of this conversation, we will be able to see and say for ourselves, for especially a country like Nigeria, who is more affected and who should we, what we should be doing to change the narrative. And this violence usually results in, before I get into that, just bear in mind that this violence, sometimes it is attempted, sometimes it is actual, and it takes different forms, and it's likely to result in physical, sexual, psychological, or socioeconomic harm. And it could occur anywhere, in public, in private, it could occur anywhere, and nobody is exempted. That's the thing around gender-based violence. Nobody is exempted. It could happen to anybody. And so we'll look at the types, just a run through of the types. There's the physical violence that takes the form of, physical force, hitting someone, assaulting someone physically, causing injury to them. And as I'm saying this, I want us to also begin to think about the people around us that we know. Have you heard of a woman, a girl, someone, that has been hit, that was beaten, that was, battered in this manner? That is physical violence. That is physical violence. The thing about this topic, this discussion, is that it's really practical. You don't need to read any textbook, or you don't need to go looking for deep definitions. It's really practical. We see it everywhere around us. It also takes the sexual manifestation or the There's the sexual violence as well, and it comprises the acts or any act performed on an individual without their consent. So acts of a sexual nature, um, pertaining to their sexual organs, the breast, the vagina, the penis, and all that, the private parts, the parts that we call private, without their consent. And it could take the form of a rape. Rape is a whole conversation. It's a big conversation on its own, or sexual assault, sexual harassment. It takes different forms. And then there's the psychological violence, which could cause psychological harm. Somebody said, I remember talking to someone around violence, and they said, were they beating the person? Did they beat the person? Did they beat? Did they beat? What happened? And I'm like, they don't have to beat the person. Psychological violence or could take the form of coercion, defamation, verbal insult or harassment, cold treatment. That is also a form of gender-based violence. And then there's the economic violence, where resources are held back or someone is denied access to resources, or to financial resources, educational resources, and all that. And then this is the prevalence. I don't know if, yeah. So for the prevalence, globally, 1 in every 3 women, like Rosemary has just said. And then in Nigeria, the statistics or the facts we have here for Nigeria were gotten from the 2018 NDHS, and don't see just 3 as a number. These are human beings. It means that if we have 50 women on this call right now, 3 out of every 10, just so that we drive the point home. It means that in every office where women come in, girls come in, dressed properly, well made up, well put together, it means that 3 out of every 10, that in every school classroom, that in the crowd where you are, 3 out of every 10 women that are age 15 and above have experienced violence. So you see, something that we need to keep talking about. And then especially physical violence, that 31% of women in Nigeria within the ages of 15 to 49, as at 2018, had experienced physical violence. And then there's the female genital mutilation, which is a form of harm, which is a harmful practice. And these are huge numbers. These are huge numbers. This is something that transcends class. You could be a professor, you could be a medical doctor, you could be really accomplished, but yeah, women are not, and girls are not exempted for some reasons that we will see shortly. And another thing we should also bear in mind is that about 50% of women in Nigeria do not even report. Not everybody reports. So even the data we have from this report that we are referencing here it does not represent everyone, because not everybody reports. Now, there are some intersecting discriminations, that drive or that enable gender-based violence in Nigeria. Nigeria is a country with our social cultural context enables high tolerance for gender-based violence. And violence that targets women is deeply rooted. Something happens to a woman and they say, it's your husband or it's your cross, you have to bear it too. You cannot shame our family. Your uncle, somebody's uncle, raped them or something, and then they cannot talk about it because you don't bring shame to the family. You want to bring shame to the family or to your husband, or you want to report. Why do you report your husband? Or your religion says X, Y, and Z. So all those conspire together, to entrench or to drive gender-based violence. We also have the harmful traditional practices like widowhood practices, like female genital mutilation, and some of the other ones. We also have early and forced marriage. That by the time a girl is sent off to marry at an early age, she's denied her rights to education. She does not have her reproductive organs or reproductive parts are not even fully mature yet. So she does not have the decision-making power, the power to make informed decisions, then that's also intersect with the economic, because without a good education, their access to resources is restricted or limited. And then there's the limited legal protection. We also hear, I will not talk about that because I know there's another speaker that will speak to protection, legal protection and all. And then there's the stigma around not reporting. Remember, I said that it's over 50% of women and girls do not even report at all. So you will not even know. Then how do all these affect women and girls? It results in physical injuries. Remember, there's a physical manifestation, from bruises to cuts to broken bones. And I'm sure there's nobody on this call that will tell me that they have not met or they do not know a woman that has undergone this kind of physical violence. So these are not stories that we are telling. These are real issues. We've also heard some really high profile cases of women who, who have died as a result of physical violence from maybe their intimate partners. There's also the psychological trauma. This is not emphasized enough. We don't talk about this enough, but it affects people's mental health. There's this sense of powerlessness. There's this sense of, what else do I do? There's this low self-esteem. And then people say, why don't you do like this? Why didn't you do like that? They don't know that in that situation, the woman or the girl is no longer herself. She's afraid. She's anxious. She's depressed. So these are real issues. Sometimes you have women, you have colleagues who become suddenly very absent-minded, who become very forgetful, who become withdrawn. Someone that was really bubbly, becomes really withdrawn, and you don't know. These are some of the effects. Psychological trauma. Then it also affects the sexual and reproductive health, and then there's also the social stigma and isolation. So quickly, I'll just look at a case study. Because one of the things I was asked to do is to share, just share an experience or an intervention that was successful around addressing or around empowering or addressing gender-based violence. This story or this program is the STEAM flagship program for women and girls. It was implemented between 2021 and 2022. And on this program, the Spotlight Initiative supported Youth Hub Africa to implement the project in Abuja, 2 cohorts. And Youth Hub Africa worked with or partnered with other service providing organizations in the FCT. We know that in Nigeria, where we live, sometimes opportunities come and the people that are not qualified, quote unquote, gain entry. But for this program, it was not open to just everybody. It was open to only women and girls that have survived or were currently experiencing sexual violence. And so we went to the FCT, Sexual Development Secretariat. We went to organizations like FIDA, organizations that have, that were providing services or had records or had access to actual survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. They were recruited. We had interviews, because again, this is something that affects lots of women and girls, but then the opportunity was limited to a few people. So we had to prioritize. They were recruited and enrolled into a bag making academy, the Luluk Academy here in Abuja, for 6 months training each. And for this training, we used I was also part of this program. I was also part of implementing this project, and we adopted an integrated approach that included manufacturing, sexual reproductive health information, use of information technology, life skills, and all that, to be able to. It was a program to empower women and girls, more like a second chance opportunity. And while they learned bag making, They learned life skills, they learned business management, they learned how to use technology or digital skills, how to use social media for their marketing, for their businesses. They also learned around stuff. They also gained information around sexual reproductive health and rights, and sexual and gender-based violence. And I was opportune to facilitate those sessions. In fact, even from the recruitment, you heard people's stories. And it fired you up much more. Or like if you were not sure of why you were in that room or why you were walking in that place or within the space, it even reaffirmed, your decision, or it was just like a signpost to say you're doing the right thing, because women and girls, young girls should not have to have these kinds of experiences. Really, very quite some experiences. And during the trainings they were given, they would receive financial support, to cover their transportation cost, because like I said in the previous slides, there are different intersecting discriminations, limited resources. Some people stay in situations that are harmful because of limited access to resources. So to remove that barrier, they were given a monthly transportation stipend. They were given breakfast and lunch in the course of lessons or during their stay in school. And at the end of the 6 months, and you see, from the very beginning, you go to class, you go to the school, you enter the class, and people will not be able to really express themselves. And by month 2, month 3, you hear them talking, expressing themselves, bonding with other women, forming relationships, and addressing some of the issues that they had mentioned that they have. I'll share one or two as I try to round off. And upon graduation, they were given startup kits. I will not mention what and what was there. And as at the last week, one of them called to say, I need access to even bigger markets. As at last year, she was already sending bags to Ghana. This is a woman with a person with disability whose husband was harassing left, right, and center everywhere. Before she participated in this program, she had gone to the police several times. They would turn her back. She didn't know what to do. Of course, she had gone to one of the partners in the FCT. Yes, that is how she was. When the opportunity came, she was sent. We got connected to her, and she was enrolled in the program. And by the time she was done, she was sending bags to Ghana. By the time the man started it again, she went to the police, and she knew what to ask for. She knew what to do. And the man was made to sign an undertaking. She was like, whoa, this has never happened before. And as at last week, I'm looking for opportunities to train more women. I'm looking for opportunities to supply bags somewhere. I'm looking for opportunities. And for me, that is huge. That is fulfilling. That is what I live for. That like for me, those are the gains. To see a woman that was vulnerable, to be able to get back on her feet, and then to even look for opportunities to impact the lives of other women. This same woman referred another person the following year, and that person also gained entry into our program. And I think yesterday or 2 days ago, they reached out to say that they have been employed by the school that trained them during the STEAM flagship program. Several other stories like that. But I know that I have only 20 minutes, so I will stop there, just to say that sexual and gender-based violence is real, is not a myth, it's not something far-fetched, it's everywhere around us, and there really are no excuses. There really are no you can't afford to just be neutral and not be anywhere. You have to pick a side. I hope that you stand on the side of women, of women and girls, providing support in whatever way that you can. And for women, girls, whoever that is undergoing or is or know someone that is undergoing violence, these are the contact details of the FCT Sexual and Gender-Based Violence Response Team here in Abuja. Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity again to have this conversation. I'm hoping that someone is living here more determined, more resolute to play their own part and not to perpetrate violence, do not condone it, do not make excuses for violence in whatever form, and then to seek help, to not stay silent if you or anyone around you needs support. Thank you very much for this opportunity once again.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you. We appreciate you. And now at least we know that in every room we enter, there is somebody who has suffered violence, whether physical, emotional, psychological, sexual, or otherwise. And then we may just hear percentages, but the absolute number will actually scare you and wow you. Just like we said, the numbers will look like numbers to us until you see that in your place of work, one or two of these women are actually your colleagues or so. Now, we see some hands up, but please note your questions and your comments down. We'll take all of them at the end of the presentations. This is just one. We have more power-packed presentations coming our way. So we hope that we'll, at the end of every section, then we can have your questions, because somehow maybe the question you want to ask, the next presenter will answer it even before you ask the question. So please just note your questions down and we'll take them at the end. So we'll be bringing in our second speaker now. He is Ifeanyi Afford Raymond. Ifeanyi is a passionate advocate for youth empowerment and social justice. Armed with a degree in diplomacy and history from University of Nigeria, Ifeanyi is not just an academic, but a dedicated youth consultant. As a founder of the Remade Group, an advocacy youth group, Ifeanyi has taken on the challenge of making a positive impact on society. His commitment to ending child marriage and harmful practices has earned him recognition and training from both UNICEF and the African Union. Ifeanyi proudly served as the chairperson of Watetezi Africa, an African advocacy organization supported and recommended by UNICEF and the AU. In addition, he contributed his time and expertise as a voluntary youth advocate and representative for the UNICEF-led project in Nigeria, Movement for Good to End FGM, which garnered support from over 2 million pledges. With a focus on youth mobilization, volunteerism, and strategic thinking, Ifeanyi has played key roles in impactful interventions across Africa, engaging with the West African Students' Union as a comrade. He also holds a significant position as a member of the UN Education Cannot Wait Youth and Student Constituency, where he passionately represents the youth of Nigeria. Join me as we welcome Ifeanyi, who will be speaking to us on the topic of men as allies in the fight against gender-based violence. Welcome, Mr. Ifeanyi.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm just struggling to place my phone. I hope you all can see me. Can you all see me? Is it visible, or is the light at my back interrupting?
Okay, we can see you.
Okay, you can see me. Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess I will just manage this. So thank you so much for having me. As you can see, I am even wearing our campaign because we are still in the 16 days of activism. So I'll be talking about engaging men and the role men need to play when it comes to ending GBV, female genital mutilation, child abuse, and everything. I'll start with a concept called positive masculinity. When we talk about positive masculinity, what are we talking about? We're talking about positive attitude for men that we're expected to protect us because of hunger race. So promoting positive masculinity,
we lost you at some point. Can you please go over that again?
Sorry, did you miss something?
Yes, we lost you at the point where you almost began, where you were talking about having men's role in the advocacy against GBV.
Okay, so I was talking about positive masculinity, the role men are to play. So I'm listing one of the roles, which is promoting positive masculinity. When it comes to promoting positive masculinity, this is the attitude that's expected from men to positively influence their decisions and the way they relate with their family, with the society as a positive male champion. So when we look at positive masculinity, it is something that is expected of men of all ages, all sizes to kind of give out. Because in the society, we're seeing that men are seen as, the stronger and the higher gender, which is actually something that, if we look at it, you see that whatever a man is doing, a woman is always involved. And there is no way we cannot do without each other. We need each other. We need to hold each other's hand. So that concept, that ideology of superiority is where positive masculinity comes in, where we want men to start using what they have as a man to positively influence society, especially with their. So that is it. And another part that IBV, ending female genital mutilation and ending all forms of violence. Because what are we talking about? Literally, it is men that carry out this activity, and sometimes also women carry. So that's why it's called gender-based violence. So it's from this gender to the other gender. So, but mostly with the data available, it's showing that it is more from men to women. And that is why we want fellow men to become champions and become advocates in ending this terrible, harmful practices. Because why? When men come together and discuss, just for example, when you play football, you'll realize that that is when some conversations are deep, and that is what some men take home because they feel that this is what other men understand. This is what other men are doing. So we need men to begin to champion a very, 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 very positive and correct thing for the society. We want men to begin to see that, okay, my wife is meant to be treated with love, my daughter is meant to be treated with love, my sister is meant to be treated with love, my girlfriend is meant to be treated with love, respect, and not, killing or fighting or, harming your loved ones in the name of, oh, I'm the man, I am meant to control you. So these are the things that we need to take home. And lastly, it is important to know that we need to start harmonizing our approaches, getting more men involved, inclusion of men in every conversation. Even if it is for women, there should be men involved because we have the he for she. And he for she is a platform for men to be advocates, to be champions, to sensitize their community, to carry on this mantle and ensure that they are doing their own quarter in ending harmful practices. Because of time, I won't be speaking long, but I would also like to say a few other things. That as we are all gathered here, we keep on talking. it is time for us to put in action. Talking is good, advocacy is good, but actually implementing what we are talking about is important. Because when we look at the situation of things in Nigeria, you see that the issue that we are having is implementation. Sometimes it's very difficult, it's very hard for us to carry out the policies that are available to us. So at the end of the day, uh, that problem is still on. But there are a lot of things have been done. A lot of funding have been put in place. A lot of things have even, been championed. So this is something that is known as a man about ending GBV, gender-based violence, about ending harmful practices, and even most importantly, female genital mutilation and child marriage, because these are things that shouldn't be happening in our modern age. Data, science, and research have shown us that these are problems that must end and it should end. So I will stop here for now. And I'm very, very happy that I was able to speak with everyone here. And thank you so much for having me. And I will do my best to stay put and answer any questions that is required. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ifeanyi. We appreciate your contributions. At least now we know that we have men on our sides. Promoting positive masculinity is something that we really are happy with. And we know that with involvement of men in ending female gender-based violence against women and girls, it's going to be a good fight at the end of the day. So we will be moving immediately to our third speaker. Now we have heard from seasoned experts on gender-based violence. Now we are going to the legal aspect of it. We're going to see what it means or what is involved in having laws that guide against gender-based violence. We are bringing in our third speaker, who is Barrister Brenda Mesaje. Please pardon me if I murder your name. Brenda Mesaje is a lawyer from the Legal Aid Council of Nigeria. She studied law at the University of Jos and received her Barrister at Law from the Nigerian Law School, currently pursuing a master's degree in Peace and Conflict Studies at the Federal University, Lokoja. As a lawyer at the Legal Aid Council of Nigeria, her role involves representing individuals who cannot afford legal services. She is dedicated to ensuring that everyone, regardless of their financial situation, has access to justice. She is also a member of FIDA, that is the International Federation of Women Lawyers, where their primary focus is to protect, promote, and preserve the rights of women and children. Her commitment to human rights and combating sexual-based violence has led her to attend various training sessions, both officially and through NGOs like UNOCD, UNODC, and AGA Africa. Barrister Mesaje will be speaking to us about the VAP law in Nigeria, that is the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act 2015, and its applications so far. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me as we welcome Barrister Brenda Mesaje to take the stage. Thank you very much.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hi. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
No, we can't see you.
I don't know what is wrong. I think something is wrong with the settings. Maybe you should help me check. Because it keeps on telling me you cannot start your video because the host has disabled it. So kindly check the settings. Okay, all right.
Okay, I think we can see you now.
All right. Good afternoon. And I'm so delighted to be here. I'm so happy to be a part of this conversation. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. So I'll be talking this afternoon about the VAP law. VAP simply means Violence Against Persons Prohibition Law. That is for the states, but Violence Against Persons Prohibitions Act, that is the federal law that we have. Now, let me just go ahead to give a brief synopsis of the VAP. As the VAP law 2015. The VAP law criminalizes sexual gender-based violence, any form of violence at all. I'm talking about rape, I'm talking about battery, forceful ejection from home, economic abuse, harmful widowhood practices, just like the first speaker has said. It criminalizes any form of violence to a person. And then the VAP law is not just, for one gender. It is for everybody, because it simply says Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act or law, as the case may be. So I can safely say that it prohibits all forms of violence against persons, both in public and private life. Hello, are you with me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
All right. So the VAP law prohibits all forms of violence, and then it provides maximum protection for victims. It also provides effective remedies for victims, and then it also prescribes punishments for offenders. So this VAP law is all encompassing. It defines the punishment, rather the crime, and then it provides remedies for the victims, and then it prescribes punishment for the offenders of this VAP law. So now, the legal framework in Nigeria today addressing gender-based violence, this VAP law is the only federal law. As for now, it is the only federal law that is available for checking violence against persons. And then I can also say that the Child's Rights Law, that is for the various states, the Child's Rights Act, that is applicable in FCT. That act also condemns any form of violence against children. So that I can say is also a law that addresses issues of violence. Now, the VAP law, talking about the VAP law and the various states in Nigeria, some states have domesticated it while others are yet to. But almost all the states have domesticated this VAP law. But some few states, like, let me say, I know of Kano, I know of Katsina, and then Zamfara, they are yet to domesticate it. So for now, they don't have that VAP law in those states. And I really don't know why. I can't say why. But I want to say, and I would like to say, that any responsive government at all should look into this law. It is very, very important that all states domesticate this law, and also the Child's Rights Act. And then there are states like Lagos and Ekiti that have their own special law. Since 2007, I think Lagos has a special law that deals with violence against persons. Yes, so any responsive government should at least try and have this VAP law. So I just want us to look briefly at advocacy efforts for policy change as regards this GVB. What are the efforts, that can be done, the things that can be done in order to, stem the tide of this menace in our society today. Advocacy is very, very important. Activism too, that is what we do. Just like I mentioned in the profile, my own profile, I'm also a member of FIDA. And we do advocacy visits a lot. We do activism a lot in order to create that awareness. Yes. Because our country, we have this issue. In Africa generally, we have the issue of patriarchy. And that is one thing that really, really enables men to abuse women. The issue of patriarchy is there. Some of these things are embedded in the culture, in some of our cultures. So we do advocacy a lot in order to enlighten the public, in order to create that awareness that no, things shouldn't be so. So it is a very, very effective tool that can be used to influence the general public, their own mindset. And also it can be used to influence lawmakers to bring about the necessary changes in our policies. That is, policies that protect girls and women. So I'll also advise states that do not have these laws, states that don't use this law, to engage, to make use of this tool. We're talking about activism and advocacy. Let them reach out to the powers that be so that, there can be a change. Now, there's also the issue of creating awareness through the internet. Yes, apart from activism and advocacy. We've been doing a lot of programs, even online, in order to create awareness. Because a lot of our people, most especially the younger generation, they are always active on the internet. So that is also another field, as also a very good tool that we can use to reach out to people, to reach out to the public at large, to even reach out to our lawmakers in order to bring about the necessary changes that we want. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, ma'am.
Yes, we can hear you, ma.
Okay, thank you. Now, just like I mentioned earlier, there are some states that have not even domesticated this VAP law. It's so sad. Personally, when I think about it, it really makes me sad. Just like I mentioned Kano, I mentioned Katsina, I mentioned Zamfara. I don't know the reason for, I don't know the reason. But, well, I practice in Kogi State, and I know that it has been domesticated. And at least as a practicing lawyer, I've seen, a couple of times where offenders are being charged under this law. So it really gives me joy that, okay, we are trying to do something to stem the tide of this GBV. You go to court, you see cases, most especially physical abuse. That is in marriages, you see it, and then you see the issue of children too being abused. It's so sad. But then this law, at least where I am practicing, I can safely say that I have seen, the efforts, the government is making, trying to prosecute people that are offenders. I cannot speak for the other states. Yes. And then another thing I've observed is that, issues of sexual and gender-based violence, most times when a person is going through this, the person needs to be removed from that environment where he or she is facing the abuse. So I want to talk about shelter. Shelter that government provides for such victims. It is very, very important. I know that some states have it, but where I am, even in Kogi State, there's nothing like that. So most times these victims are faced with the problem of, where do I go to? Where do I run to? So it is very, very important. We've been doing a lot of advocacy visits on this too. And I know by the grace of God in Kogi State, something will happen very soon. Yes, in this regard, shelter or trauma centers for such people. And then they also need counseling. They need healthcare. So I think we need, or states need to create like a one-stop shop, or a one-stop center where these victims can come and access all this help that they need. A victim of rape needs urgent medical attention. You will agree with me. He or she needs, what do we call it? A counseling, because it is a traumatizing experience. And then they need help so that they can leave that environment where they are facing that abuse. I've seen so many cases like that. Sometimes you see some of our members, like FIDA members, taking some of these victims into their families to keep them safe for the time being. Sometimes I've seen female police officers, very wonderful police officers in the family department unit, family department or family unit, sorry, they keep such victims with them until the situation is sorted. So the government, they need to look into the issues of shelter. While we talk about this VAP, it is very, very important. I'm sure in Lagos, they have something like that, and one or two states that I have heard of. So basically, hello, are you with me?
Yes, we can hear you, ma. Go ahead.
All right. So I will just want to emphasize once more on the issue of the laws. I mentioned the VAP law, and then I mentioned the Child Rights laws, that's for the states, and then the Child Rights Act for the FCT. And then I'll briefly talk about the Constitution too. Yes, the Constitution is the ground norm of all laws of the land. And then I know that the Constitution provides for, it prohibits any form of abuse or violence against a person. A person has the right to live. The person has the right to life. He has the right to free association. So the Constitution too borders on that. But the VAP law talks specifically about violence. That is a law that was created specifically to tackle this issue of violence and all manner of abuses. So I think basically this is what I have for now. And just like we always say, we always talk to the victims. We always, during our enlightenment campaign, we always tell people, don't be an enabler. Wherever you see SGBV going on, any form of abuse, speak out. And then avoid stigmatization. Don't stigmatize a person. You see where a person is saying she is raped, and then, they are asking her all manner of demeaning questions and making some remarks that are so unfair. And then also, do not be silent. Do not be an enabler. Do not be silent. Let us do away with the culture of silence. When you are going through it, come out and then speak out where you will find help. Thank you so much. Basically, this is all I have to discuss for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ma. We appreciate. This has been an insightful one
Thank
for
you.
us. At least now we know that making efforts to prosecute offenders and to give maximum protection to victims.
Yeah.
That's good information for us. And we also use this medium to appreciate FIDA for the advocacy and awareness creations that they do for victims, survivors of gender-based violence. Okay, so this is the point where we take questions. I can see hands are up. I will start with Mr. Nelson. Your hand is up. So we'll take your questions now. And We appreciate the speakers that are still around with us. I believe anybody who has questions would direct their questions to the concerned speakers, and we would appreciate it if you keep it simple and short. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Sorry, I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so thank you very much for this enlightening session. And I took a lot of notes. And I want to just say thank you to all the speakers for sharing their experiences and how they are contributing to advocate against sexual and gender-based violence against our women and girls. So I think I'll be asking my question directly to Mr. Ifeanyi, because the issue of female genital mutilation is deeply rooted in culture, and it makes it very complex for us to solve that problem. So I just want to ask you, Mr. Ifeanyi, how can community-led initiatives overcome this big barrier of cultural practices, cultural norms, and attitudes towards abandoning the practice of FGM? I don't know if you understand my question, sir.
Sorry, can you just briefly repeat it?
Okay, so Mr. Ifeanyi, the question is, female genital mutilation is deeply rooted in cultural practices. And based on some of the interventions we do that are community-led, this is one of the major bottlenecks we face. So how can you enlighten us, or how can you highlight steps or suggestions, practices that we can use to counter these community norms, community attitudes towards female genital mutilation based on your experience?
Okay. I think I get you now. So you asked a very brilliant question. And if you have listened closely to my last presentation, I mentioned key strategies, 3 key strategies. Number one, positive masculinity. So now, when you come to the community, when you come to those people that are at the local level, that don't even have phones, that don't have Android phones, that don't know what is happening online, that don't even know what 16 days of activism is. So what you can do is, as an advocate or as someone working in the CSO sector, you carry these strategies to them in their own local languages. Then you try to look for someone that can influence at the community level, someone that is a little bit literate, someone that understands the terms. Now, when you have pitched this solution, to that person, that prominent person, that influencer in the community, then the influencer will enable you talk to these people, tell them, teach them what it takes to be to perform a positive masculinity. With this positive masculinity, that is when we are heading to achieve what we call behavioral change. And now behavioral change takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. It is something that happens constantly. You have to keep on constantly saying the same thing over and over and over and over again till everybody is aware that this is actually something that is important. That is why they keep on talking about it. So this is what I will say. And also another strategy that works, that helps us achieve what we want at the grassroots level is, let us try as to kind of include incentives to whatever we're doing. For example, if you're a CSO organization that has donor partners funding and everything, and you are planning a community advocacy, include incentives in your advocacy outreach, because now people understand the language of giving. When you give somebody something, he will want to know, why did you give me this? What do you want from me? What do you expect from me? Now that is your opportunity to enshrine the thing that they will give back to you, which is to do the things to stop this GBV and female genital mutilation. We have tried it several times and it's working. So I encourage every CSO here to adopt such strategies. Incentives, include incentives in your advocacy efforts. Let it be something that will entice the community to actually listen to you, because when an hungry man is seated, he doesn't care anything you're talking about. He knows that he needs to be fed. He's hungry. So that is the major priority for the person. Then when you feed the person, he can be able to listen to you. So this is from me, and thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ifeanyi, for that wonderful response. So we'll take Arome David. Your hand is up also. We'll have your question now, please.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you for this opportunity. So my question goes to the first speaker. I have copies of questions here. So my very first question here is, so what are the situations that predisposes people to gender-based violence? That is the first question to the first speaker. So the second question, still to the first speaker. So what is the difference between sexual exploitation and harassment? Then the third question, my third question is issues around stigmatization. So what can be done at the community level to address issues bubbling around stigmatization against GBV survival? And the very last question goes to the third speaker. I just want you to throw more light on the anti-sexual harassment bill. I don't know if the president has ascended to this because it's still a bone of contention. I don't know if you could throw more light on this, the anti-sexual harassment bill. Thank you.
Thank you, David Arome. We'll take it one at a time. So, Ashifa, the first question was addressed to you. That's the situation that predisposes one to SGBV and the difference between sexual exploitation and harassment. Ashifa, are you with us? Yeah. Okay, so while we wait for Ashifa, we'll take the next question, which was directed to Barrister Brenda. The laws.
Okay. Good afternoon. Good afternoon once more. Okay.
Good afternoon, Barrister.
All right, talking about this anti-sexual harassment bill. I know that as at 2020, the year 2020, the Senate, in one of its plenary sessions, had passed that bill. You know, that bill that seeks to prevent, you know, harassment in tertiary institutions, I think. But it has not been, I don't think the president has assented to it. So let me do my findings. I'll revert back.
Okay, ma'am.
All right.
David, does that work?
Yes, it's fine. So I also asked question around addressing stigmatization against GBV survival. So how can this be addressed?
Okay, talking about the issue of stigmatization, truly, just like I mentioned earlier, what we do is through enlightenment, through awareness. We tell people how bad it is, to stigmatize such people. They are the victims, and then if people are throwing shades at them to make them look as if they are bad. Or that is because when a girl says, for instance, I was raped, and then somebody looks at her and says, see the way you are dressed, they will rape you. Or you, Seth, why did you go there? Waiting, carry you go there. You understand? So what we do, the most we can do is just to create that awareness, to tell people that it is totally, totally wrong. We do a lot of activism on that. Basically, that is what we do. It's not like the law has criminalized it. That people who cause stigma to others, they face some kind of prosecution. There's nothing like that for now. So what we do is just this advocacy. We use our power of advocacy to, tell people that, no, this is totally, totally wrong.
Thank you, Ma. Ashifa, so your questions, you can answer your questions now. Situations that predisposes one to SGBV and the difference between sexual exploitation and harassment.
Okay, thank you very much. Like we said, sexual and gender-based violence is usually directed or targeted at someone because of their gender, because of the vulnerabilities that exist around them, or they find themselves grappling with. For example, being female. There are cultural, there are social, there are biological characteristics or issues that predispose women to violence. And so I would say that to respond to that question, I would say that actually it's basically the existence of a perpetrator. Because there really is nothing to justify sexual and gender-based violence. There are structural issues, issues around discrimination, issues around the sociocultural context, issues around limited access to resources. For example, a girl that needs school fees goes to someone to ask for help, and the person tries to take advantage. But you see, the thing with gender-based violence is that it's not like a one size, there's no one answer to all the questions, because, okay, so what about someone else that was sitting in their own house and someone came to meet them? What about a little child? So it's truly about the existence of someone who is who perpetrates the act of sexual and gender-based violence. The burden really lies with them and not necessarily with the victim. I hope that helps. Then to the second question around the difference between sexual exploitation and sexual harassment. To my mind, sexual exploitation is about using someone using their position of power to exploit or to take advantage, or abusing their relationship or a position of trust to exploit someone or to take advantage of some other person, some vulnerable person sexually. For example, women and girls in the context of internally displaced persons camps. They have left their homes. They are living on handouts. If you don't give them food, they will not eat. They can't go to work. They can't go to farm. They can't do anything. And maybe they need food or they need favors. And someone who is in a position of authority, maybe a camp official or something, saying, okay, if you want to eat, you know what to do, that kind of thing. That is an example or an illustration of sexual exploitation. It could happen in the workplace, where there is a power imbalance. Yeah, there's a power. There's a power imbalance. There's a boss. There's a person of authority. There's someone at the lower level. That is exploitation. That is just a situation or a scenario where exploitation could take place. Then for harassment or sexual harassment is making unwelcome advances of a sexual nature. Key word, unwanted and unwelcome. sexual advances at someone, they don't want it, they are not interested in it. That is sexual harassment. And for the question around stigma, someone has already responded to it. It's basically dealing with stigma is about talking about these things, not keeping silent like what we are doing. The more we begin to talk about these things freely, the better for us. It is when, as you talk about them, that someone gets bold. Remember, I mentioned the STEAM flagship program that we implemented. It was as we began to share experiences in that class that other women began to open up to say, oh, such a thing happened to me when I was younger. And I truly didn't know it was sexual abuse or it was abuse until this moment when we started talking about it. And then from there on, women began to just talk and to express themselves. And I believe that was the beginning of the healing process and all that. So stigma, we need to begin to talk about these things that are shrouded in secrecy or so basically I hope that I have addressed the questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Like I always say, the victim should not be blamed. It is never the fault of the victim. Nothing should predispose one to SGBV. The problem is the perpetrator and not the victim. Mr. Clement, let's have your questions, please. Clement, we cannot hear you if you are speaking. He's speaking?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Okay, we can hear you now.
Oh, great. Good. So first of all, I'd like to thank all the speakers for their contributions. So my question is directed to Mrs. Brenda. I recollected that she was speaking about the VAP law that has been implemented or is being implemented in a number of states. But there's also the Sharia law that is being implemented in the northern states that could have some, let's say, differences from the VAP law. And this makes it sort of a struggle because now people are more inclined to culture in these regions than law, let's say. So the first question is, how do we address these concerns? Then the next question is, the law enforcers who are supposed to even help these women who come to report these cases are sometimes accused of, what were you wearing? Or is your husband, you're supposed to understand, do what he wants. So what can we do to also make these law enforcers understand these things and respect these women's rights so that they can stand up for them and fight for them?
Okay. All right, let me go ahead and, answer your question. You see, the nature of our country, the North practices their own Sharia law. You see, these are some of the issues that we are having. So maybe they feel, hello, can you hear me, Mr. Clement?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. So maybe it is because of the dominance of their own Sharia law. That is why they don't even see any reason why they should, take up this VAP law. You understand? So that these are some of the issues that we are facing. For now, we are still doing a lot of advocacy, to see how this will, we can work on this. Because the northern states, like their Sharia law, it has to do with their religion. So it's deeply rooted in them. So I don't really know what the government can do about this to make sure that we have these uniform laws, because it is a problem. I'm going to admit it is a problem. And then talking about the attitude of our law enforcement agents. Yes, I've seen a situation where a person was raped, and this is a person who has grown-up kids, a widow, and a police officer made a very, very stupid comment to her. because she didn't even come out to say it on time until eventually when the thing was eating her up, her children brought her forth. And, you know, the person, the officer on duty said, why didn't you come since? He'd be like, are you sure you didn't enjoy that thing? That was why you kept quiet. And it was really sad for her. She regretted why she even came out. But now I can say that we've been having a lot of trainings with these officers. We've had trainings. Even last week, we had a training, sort of like a synergy for all stakeholders. And, you know, this has really helped to change their own mindset too. We work with a lot of them. I'm a practicing lawyer. I'm always in court. And then I see that these trainings have helped. Those of them that are able to attend these trainings, they go back and then they step it down for those. And then we've like in Lokoja, the civil defense controller of that state invited our feeder chairperson to come and enlighten his officers. So if we can do things like this, it is really going to go a long way in helping us, most especially to, you know, to help the attitude of our law enforcement agencies. I hope I have answered your question, sir.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Mr. Simon Enejo, let's have your question.
Okay, thank you so much, Ma. I was listening keenly to the presentations, and then I thought far deep into some of the ills of the society that has bettered some of these issues we're talking about. Talking about gender-based violence, I have a question, a concern. Those of us who are parents were students in the early 70s. If you take note of the kind of dressing pattern they had then, you see how ladies are decently dressed. In fact, the opening of chest is usually men that open their chest, while women wear turtleneck like Queen Elizabeth. Now, from there, we talk about, then in the recent time, a lot of things have changed now. It is the other way around. Men dress up more corporately, and ladies, they fly their shirts, they dress anyhow. Just as a follow-up to that, there was a research conducted about 5 years ago. A checklist was administered in some communities. And some of these persons that have repeatedly had cases of attacks, sexual attacks, one, many of them do not dress decently. And the decent girls, in quotes, according to their dressing, over less than 5% of them have experiences of this attack. So, do we say that these attacks are being orchestrated by the moral decadence in the society, failure from family upbringings, or the societal ills around? Because as it is, before anything can lead to something more dangerous, I guess there should be a route to it. I don't know if this can be a true story of what we are discussing. Thank you. It's a concern.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Simon. This is a very good ground to speak. Let's have the view of Mr. Ifeanyi on this. Let's hear from a man first on this question. Mr. Ifeanyi.
Because if you give woman now, you will give fire.
Okay.
Yeah, you're calling me fine. What do you want me to say, please? Can you repeat?
My screen is frozen.
Hello? No. Sorry, Rosemary, you called it fine. What's the problem?
Yes. Can you unmute me? No, I'm even full. Okay. Mr. Ifeanyi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, please.
So, Mr. Simon spoke that in the past, in the days past rather, we have women dressing decently, and these days revealing than in the past. And this might be reasons why gender-based violence seem to be prevalent these days. So what do you have to say to that?
Thank you.
Is he talking? I can't. Sir, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
Sorry, my mic was muted. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
I was saying currently in the present day, when you go to, for example, when I was in Switzerland, Geneva, I saw, because it was a little bit hot, so some people were even wearing pants and bra, moving up and down, and nobody cares because it's your right to dress as you choose, and it shouldn't be something that defines you or the action that other people will bring to you. So even people dressing in the olden days very modest, you see that there are still cases of rape. And there is an exhibition that shows that what was she wearing? That was the campaign. And they brought even reverend sisters that were raped because of what they were wearing. So I won't justify rape with what a lady is wearing. It is something that is bad and it should be stopped, no matter her dress code, even if she's naked. You have no right to touch her because she is on her own. So that is what I have to say on this case. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ifeanyi. Now let's hear from Madam Ashifa.
Oh, thank you very much, Rosemary, and thank you, Mr. Simon, for raising those very vital questions. But I hope you don't mind. I will also ask a few questions before I continue. So if a man or if someone sees another person dressed in a way that he or they consider as indecent, who gave them the job? Who gave them the task? Who gave them the right to now abuse that person, for that reason? That's the first question. The second one is raping, for example, a woman or a girl or someone that dresses in a way that someone considers indecent, is that the corrective measure? Is that what to do to correct such a person or to correct such an act if they find it offensive? So after asking those questions, I'll just say that let's also not reduce gender-based violence to just rape or to just indecent dressing. That is why I said earlier that the victim or the survivor does not do anything to predispose themselves to being abused. The constant thing there is the perpetrator. That's the thing. Is that person's mindset? It's all on that person and nothing on the victim. And nothing on the victim. We've heard of children, infants in Nasarawa State, a baby that was, I think, about 3 months old or less, was raped, was defiled. Yeah, was defiled. Is it something she wore? You hear of children in homes. Is it something they wore? This one is controversial. I know if I mention it, people will begin to have all kinds of thoughts. But there's also something called marital rape. Women in their husbands' houses experience violence. Is it that they dress indecently in their homes, even sexual violence? Women or girls in relationships, they experience intimate partner violence. Is it because of what they wore? So let's be careful around reducing sexual violence or gender-based violence to some of this interesting mindsets or justifications. There really is no excuse. I'm glad the conversation is coming up here because that's why we're having these discussions. There really is no excuse. So if there are people here who used to think that, okay, if a woman or a girl dresses indecently, then it's my job to rape them, then you are wrong. That is criminal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ma, for that wonderful response. Mr. Simon, I believe that your question or your concerns have been answered. So let's hear from Fatima Muhammad. Your questions, ma'am. Your hand is up. Fatima Muhammad.
Okay. Hello?
Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Ahmed Suleiman.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you very much. I quickly want to take my own concern before I rush down to the mosque because today is Friday.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Each time mention is made of gender-based violence, it's always look at it from the feminine angle only. But we all have situations whereby some men suffer. So I think in the course of discussing gender-based violence, the focus should not be on the female gender alone. Only to those who do advocacy and do training, their training should be inclusive of this sensitization, taking a closer look at their children. Because whatever any child grew up with, whatever orientation a child grew up with, that orientation tends to shape the life of that person. Dress code and all that, and somebody is referring us straight to Switzerland. What is peculiar in Nigeria is different from Switzerland. Whatever life you want to live, should be conscious of your own environment, as peculiar as your own environment. If we want to implement anything, it should be in line with what is prevailing in our own environment, not taking us to Switzerland. There is a place they do need shopping in Germany at a point, but it was stopped even at then. So whatever, if you want to promote or make sure we achieve anything positive from this very discussion, henceforth, those of you who have the opportunity for training, I should include that parents, they should make sure that parents know their roles in the life of their children. Because if you don't know, we were in a situation whereby you and I know the kind of laws that runs in our country. It is only on this note that sometimes there are violations of various rights, even constitutional, nobody is saying anything. Now, people are beginning to use this as a stepping stone to attract, to be recognized that they are fighting for one thing or other. But in reality, if you are doing anything that is worth doing well, anything that is worth doing is worth doing well. So I think we should be conscious of how we make, we engage in the course of discussions like this, so that my own suggestion, like as I say, to round up, is parents should be held responsible. So advocacy should be making sure that parents take their own role. Is my own submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ahmed Suleiman. Yes, I agree with you that advocacy should be taken to parents. And as to your first question on always concentrating on the women gender or the female gender for activities as this is the 16 days of activism for violence against women. There are days when we celebrate International Men's Day and other things like that. Such activities can be planned to speak for the men on such days. And also, men don't come out to speak. The women come out to speak more. The women come out to say what bothers them more than the men do. And that is why spotlights seem to be more on the women than on the men. But where we have more men come out to speak, we'll have more advocacies going towards the men. Like you said, that the person who spoke against the indecent dressing, or that spoke when the indecent dressing question came up, you said the person referred us to Switzerland. Yes, the second person who spoke also made a very valid, or asked a very valid question. Is rape a corrective measure for indecent dressing? So no matter what we do, let us not at any point try to make the victims the guilty ones. The offenders are the guilty ones. The perpetrators are the guilty ones. Let us, whatever verdict we come up with, where the issue of gender-based violence is concerned. So thank you very much. For want of time, we will be concluding at this point. And now we are going to ask our program head of programs, Mr. Nelson, to give us our vote of thanks and a closing remark. So, Mr. Nelson, you're coming on board now.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I believe you can hear me. And as we draw the curtains of this very insightful webinar, addressing issues of gender-based violence against our women and girls and even men, I am filled with gratitude for your participation, firstly, and your engagement. Sincerely, we know there's a lot of questions that are still pending to be asked, and but because of want of time, we'll not be able to take all of those questions. However, we can take the conversation to the social media space. So you can follow us on our social media handle. I know one of my colleagues will post our handles on the chat room, and you can take the conversation there. You can ask your questions, and I'm sure that you get the answers you need. The 16 days of activism have provided us with a platform to amplify our voices and unite in the fight against injustice. I want to express my heartfelt thank you to our esteemed speakers who spoke passionately, who expressed and shedding light on the challenges faced by women, by men, and girls globally. I want to say your contributions have undoubtedly inspired us to create that change that we want to see in our society. And to our very dear attendees, thank you for joining this webinar. This just clearly shows your commitment to learning and advocating for a safer world for all. And this is very commendable. I just want to encourage us to carry the knowledge and motivation that we have gained from this webinar to our community. Let's spark the conversations in our communities so that we can lead to meaningful action. I like something that Mr. Efrain said. He said, enough of advocacy, enough of sensitization, enough of talking, that it is time for us to take action. Lastly, I want to express my gratitude to the AYGF team and for spearheading this beautiful initiative and putting together this wonderful webinar. I want to also say thank you to our executive director for giving us the platform to be able to do this. And thank you all. So let's take the torch forward and carry this activism forward. Remember, we have been talking too much, we've been doing advocating too much. It is time for us to take action. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nelson. It is Dr. Aram Esadifu. I don't know if you have a closing word for us. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you in a very special way to Mrs. Ashifa Agede, Barrister Brenda, Mr. J, and Mr. Ifeanyi Ofodu. Thank you very much. We appreciate your presentations and your views on this matter. Okay, so this has officially brought us to the end of this webinar. Thank you very much, and have a nice day. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you and bye.